The lecture hall on Station Harmony was massive. Rows of seats curved around a central platform where Commander Vexthal stood with his arms crossed behind his back. His scaled skin gleamed under the bright lights, and his yellow eyes scanned the crowd of cadets before him. More than 200 young pilots sat waiting, representing 40 different species from across the galaxy. Some had tentacles. Others had wings folded against their backs. A few breathed through devices attached to their faces because the station's atmosphere did not match their home worlds. Near the back of the hall, 3 humans sat together. Lieutenant Jake Morrison leaned back in his chair, trying to look relaxed, even though his heart was beating faster than usual. Next to him sat his friend Carl, who kept tapping his fingers on the desk. On his other side, Lisa stared straight ahead with intense focus. Commander Vexthal's voice echoed through the hall. Today we discuss the Federation Flight Simulator. For 300 years, this system has tested every pilot who wishes to fly for our fleet. The simulation is fair. It is consistent. It measures your skills against a standard that has proven reliable across all known species. A holographic display appeared above the commander, showing a starship navigating through a field of spinning asteroids. The ship moved smoothly, avoiding collisions with precise calculations. It looked almost boring in its perfection. The test scenario is straightforward, Vexthal continued. You must complete a rescue mission. A civilian transport has suffered engine failure in an asteroid field. You will pilot a standard patrol craft to reach the transport, attach towing cables, and guide it safely back to the station. The simulation increases in difficulty based on your skill level. Obstacles will appear. Systems may fail. You must adapt and complete the mission. Several cadets nodded. This sounded reasonable. Jake watched the hologram and felt his fingers twitch, already imagining the controls in his hands. Most species require between 5 and 7 attempts to pass the simulation, the commander said. The Zentari, known for their methodical planning, average 3 attempts. The Kelvin typically need 9, because they struggle with 3-dimensional thinking. The Horthax hold the record for most attempts at 47, though they eventually pass. Laughter rippled through the hall. A Horthax cadet in the 3rd row made a rude gesture with his antenna. However, Vexthal said, and his voice dropped lower. The laughter stopped. There is one species that operates under different rules. Jake felt Carl tense beside him. Lisa's hands gripped the edge of her desk. Humans are permitted only 1 attempt at the simulator. If they fail, they are permanently barred from piloting any Federation vessel. No exceptions, no second chances. 1 attempt is all they receive. The hall exploded into confused chatter. Alien cadets turned to stare at the humans in the room. Jake kept his face neutral, but inside his stomach twisted. He had known this rule existed, but hearing it announced so publicly made it feel more real. A Zentari cadet raised her slender hand. Commander, why do humans face this restriction? They seem capable enough. Their reaction times are within acceptable ranges. Vexathal's expression remained blank. It is Federation regulation, established 12 years ago after what we refer to as the Thompson Incident. The details are classified. But that's not fair, another cadet called out. This one was a saurian like Vexthal, with darker scales. Every species deserves equal opportunity to learn and improve. The rule is not a punishment, Vexthal replied. It is a necessary precaution. I will say nothing more on this matter. The commander moved on to discuss technical specifications of the simulator pods, but Jake barely heard the words. His mind raced with questions. What had happened 12 years ago? Why were humans singled out? He had asked these questions before, to instructors and fellow pilots, but no one would give him straight answers. The most he ever got was uncomfortable looks and vague warnings about not making the same mistakes. After the lecture ended, cadets filed out of the hall in clusters. Jake, Carl, and Lisa walked together toward the station's observation deck. Through the massive windows, they could see the simulator complex, a separate section of the station that looked like a silver mushroom attached to the main structure. "I'm going to do it tomorrow," Jake said suddenly. Carl stopped walking. "Tomorrow? Jake, you don't have to rush. You can wait, prepare more, study the scenarios." "I've been preparing for 8 months," Jake replied. "I know the asteroid field navigation protocols. I've memorized the towing procedures. I've practiced in every training module they've let me access. I'm as ready as I'm going to be." Lisa crossed her arms. "What if something goes wrong? You really want to throw away your piloting career on one attempt?" "If I wait, I'll just get more nervous," Jake said. He looked out at the simulator complex. "Besides, other humans have done this. They got through it. How hard can it be?" "We don't know how many humans failed," Carl pointed out. "We only hear about the ones who passed. What if there are dozens who washed out and we never heard their stories?" Jake shrugged. "Then I guess I'll be careful not to be one of them." That evening, Jake registered for a simulator slot. The scheduling system confirmed his appointment for 0900 hours the next day. As he confirmed the booking, a red warning message appeared on his screen. "Human pilot flagged for single attempt protocol. Command staff will be notified. Observation room access will be restricted to authorized personnel only." Jake frowned at the message. Why would command staff need to be notified? Why restrict the observation room? For every other species, simulator attempts were casual events. Instructors barely paid attention unless someone was struggling badly. But apparently, when a human stepped into the pod, it became a major event. He lay in his bunk that night, unable to sleep. Through the thin walls of his quarters, he could hear Carl snoring in the next room. Jake stared at the ceiling and ran through procedures in his mind. Enter the asteroid field at recommended speed. Maintain safe distance from debris. Use scanner to plot optimal path. Reach the transport. Attach cables. Guide it back slowly and steadily. Simple. Logical. Safe. So why did every instinct in his body tell him that simple and safe would not be enough? Jake finally drifted off to sleep around 0300 hours. He dreamed of asteroids that moved like living things, chasing his ship through darkness while alarms screamed in his ears. In the dream, he laughed and accelerated straight toward them. When he woke up, he could not remember if the dream had ended with success or disaster. At 0830 hours, Jake walked to the simulator complex. The corridors were emptier than usual. Other cadets seemed to be avoiding the area. When he reached the preparation room, he found Commander Vexthal waiting for him, along with 2 other instructors he did not recognize. "Lieutenant Morrison," Vexthal said, "you understand the parameters of this test?" "Yes, sir. 1 attempt. Pass or fail." "And you wish to proceed?" The observation room was more crowded than it had been in years. Commander Vexthal stood at the front, watching the main display screen that showed Jake's point of view from inside the simulator. Behind him, a dozen instructors had gathered, which was unusual. Simulator attempts rarely drew this much attention. But then Admiral Kelthera walked in, and the room went silent. The Admiral was a Zeltan, tall and imposing, with 4 arms and deep blue skin that seemed to shimmer under the lights. She commanded the entire training station and rarely involved herself in routine cadet activities. Her presence here meant this was not routine. "Has he started?" Kelthera asked. "Just now," Vexthal replied. "He's entering the asteroid field." On the screen, they watched Jake's ship glide forward. The patrol craft was a standard model, nothing fancy, equipped with basic weapons, shields, and a towing system. The asteroids ahead ranged from the size of small cars to massive floating mountains of rock. They drifted in lazy patterns, their orbits calculated by the simulator to create a challenging but navigable environment. Jake's approach was textbook perfect. He reduced speed to 1/4 thrust. His scanner swept the area, mapping safe corridors through the debris. He followed standard navigation protocols, taking the widest paths, avoiding unnecessary risks. "He's doing well," one instructor commented. "Very controlled." Vexthal said nothing. He had seen humans fly before. This calm beginning meant nothing. Minutes passed. Jake reached the halfway point into the asteroid field. The civilian transport appeared on his scanner, a large, ungainly vessel designed for cargo, not combat or fancy maneuvering. According to the simulation parameters, it had suffered a complete engine failure and was drifting helplessly, caught in the slow gravitational pull of the larger asteroids. "Transport is stable," Jake's voice came through the speakers. "Approaching for cable attachment." Everything was going according to plan. Several instructors relaxed slightly. Maybe this human would be different. Maybe he would complete the simulation the normal way. Then the simulation threw its first curveball. Two asteroids, drifting on intersecting paths, collided directly between Jake and the transport. The impact sent chunks of rock spraying in all directions. Debris filled the previously clear corridor. The transport's hull took several hits, and new alarms appeared on Jake's display. The ship's life support was failing faster now. This was a standard complication. The simulation expected Jake to call for backup, request heavy equipment, and wait for a larger rescue vessel to clear the debris. It was the safe choice, the smart choice. Jake did not call for backup. "He's accelerating," an instructor said, confusion in her voice. On the screen, Jake's ship surged forward directly toward the debris field. His hands moved over the weapons controls. "What is he doing?" someone asked. Then Jake opened fire. His laser cannons lanced out, striking asteroids with precise shots. But he was not trying to destroy them. Each shot hit at a calculated angle, using the explosive force to alter the asteroid's trajectory. One rock spun away to the left, another tumbled downward. A third collided with a fourth, and both shattered into smaller pieces that dispersed in predictable patterns. "He's creating a path," Vexthal said quietly. Jake's ship wove through the chaos he had created. Where there had been a solid wall of debris, there was now a narrow, twisting corridor. It was not pretty or safe by any standard definition, but it was open. He flew through it at speeds that made several observers wince. "His shield strength is dropping," an instructor called out. "He's taking too many micro-impacts." Jake reached the transport in less than 3 minutes. The cable attachment sequence should have taken another 2 minutes, but Jake skipped half the safety checks. The cables locked on with magnetic clamps. "He has the transport," Kelthera observed. "Now he should guide it back through the safe zone." But Jake was not heading toward the safe zone. He had spotted something else. One of the larger asteroids, nearly a kilometer wide, was rotating slowly. Its gravitational field was weak but measurable. Jake angled his ship toward it. "No," Vexthal breathed. "He's not actually going to—" Jake executed what human pilots called a slingshot maneuver. He brought both ships, his patrol craft and the transport, close to the massive asteroid. The gravity well grabbed them, pulling them into a tight arc. At the precise moment of maximum velocity, Jake fired his thrusters at full burn. Both ships whipped around the asteroid like stones from a sling. They hurtled back toward the station at speeds 3 times faster than recommended for towing operations. The observation room erupted into chaos. "He's going too fast," someone shouted. "The transport's structural integrity can't handle those G-forces," another added. "Pull him out of the simulation," a third instructor demanded, but Kelthera held up one hand. "Let him continue." On the screen, alarms were flashing red across Jake's control panel. The transport was groaning under the stress. Pieces of its outer hull were beginning to break away. But Jake's path was clear now. The dangerous part of the asteroid field was behind them. Ahead was relatively open space, and beyond that, station harmony. Then the simulator fought back. This was the part that made the simulation adaptive. It analyzed the pilots' choices and created new challenges to test their limits. With most pilots, this meant a few extra obstacles, maybe an equipment failure or two. With Jake, the simulator seemed to panic. A proximity alarm blared. The display showed 3 pirate ships decloaking directly in Jake's path. This was a scenario that should not appear in a basic rescue simulation. Pirate interdiction was an advanced scenario reserved for experienced pilots. "Why is the simulation spawning pirates?" an instructor asked. "The AI is adapting," Vexthal said. "It's trying to challenge him." Jake did not slow down. He did not try to fight the pirates. Instead, he changed his trajectory slightly, positioning the bulky transport directly between his ship and the pirate vessels. He was using the transport as a shield. The pirates opened fire. Their weapons struck the transport's rear section, which was already damaged and mostly empty. Jake let them shoot. Meanwhile, he targeted the asteroids still drifting nearby. More laser fire, more redirected rocks. He created a screen of debris between himself and the attackers. One pirate ship, moving too fast to avoid the sudden obstacle field, collided with an asteroid and exploded. "That should not have worked," an instructor muttered. The simulation spawned more problems. Jake's engines began overheating. A warning appeared that his primary thruster would fail in 30 seconds. The standard response was to reduce speed, let the systems cool, and switch to auxiliary power. Jake did reduce speed, but not the way anyone expected. He vented atmosphere from his ship's cargo bay. The explosive decompression created a brief burst of thrust that pushed him forward while his engines cycled down. It was inefficient, wasteful, and completely insane. It also worked. "He's going to make it," Lisa's voice came from the back of the observation room. She had snuck in with Carl, both of them watching their friend with a mixture of horror and pride. But the simulation was not done. It threw everything it had left at Jake. Asteroids appeared directly in his path. His shield generator failed. His towing cables began to fray. The transport's reactor showed signs of imminent overload. Jake responded to each crisis with another improvised solution. He shot the asteroids that he could not avoid, creating explosions that pushed his ship sideways. He rerouted power from life support to reinforce the towing system. He sent a command to the transport's computer to vent its reactor coolant, preventing the overload while creating a bright thermal flare that blinded the remaining pirate ship's sensors. Station harmony loomed ahead. Jake was coming in hot, far too hot for a normal docking approach. But there was an emergency landing bay designed for exactly this kind of situation. Jake aimed for it. His ship crossed the station's defensive perimeter. The simulation should have ended there, mission complete. The transport was safe. Jake had succeeded, but something was wrong. Jake stood in the simulator room, breathing hard, confused about what had just happened. The pod behind him was still making strange clicking noises, and warning lights flashed on panels that should have been dark. Through the window, he could see the observation room full of people rushing around in apparent panic. Commander Vexthal entered through the main door, followed closely by Admiral Kelthara. Neither looked angry exactly, but they did not look happy either. "Did I pass?" Jake asked. Vexthal opened his mouth, closed it, then opened it again. "You completed the rescue objective, yes." "Then why does everyone look like something terrible happened?" "Come with us," Kelthara said. "We need to show you something." They led Jake through corridors to the simulator control center. This was the heart of the system, where dozens of technicians monitored the training pods and maintained the artificial intelligence that ran the scenarios. Normally, it was a quiet place, with technicians working calmly at their stations. Today, it looked like a disaster zone. People were shouting. Screens showed error messages. 3 separate alarms were blaring at different pitches. A Zentari technician was arguing with a Horthax engineer, both of them pointing at a display that showed nothing but static. "What happened here?" Jake asked. You happened, Vexthal said without hostility. He pointed to a large screen that showed a timeline. This is the simulator network. We have 12 training pods total. When you started your scenario at 0900 hours, everything was functioning normally. 6 other cadets were running their own separate simulations, all different scenarios, all isolated from each other. Jake saw green status indicators for each pod at the start of the timeline. Then at 0906 hours, you began your improvised approach. You started shooting asteroids to clear a path. The simulator AI attempted to analyze your tactics. It tried to understand the logic behind your decisions. The timeline showed yellow warnings appearing on Jake's pod. At 0909 hours, you executed the slingshot maneuver. This is not part of any standard training doctrine. The AI had to extrapolate the physics in real time. It began running probability calculations to predict your next move. More yellow warnings. Then orange. At 0992 hours, when you used the transport as a shield against the pirate ships, the AI's prediction models started breaking down. It could not determine if you were following a strategy or simply reacting randomly, so it created more challenges to test your limits. Now red warnings were spreading across the timeline, not just on Jake's pod, but on the others as well. At 0915 hours, the cascade began, Kelthera said, taking over the explanation. Your flight data started corrupting the simulation database. The AI learns from every pilot, storing successful techniques and failed approaches, but it could not categorize your techniques. Were they successful? They worked, but they violated dozens of safety protocols. Were they failures? You completed the objectives, but in ways the system could not model. A technician called out from across the room. Admiral, we have another problem. Pod 7 just crashed again. Kelthera's expression darkened. Show me. A new display lit up, showing footage from Pod 7. A Kelvin cadet was supposed to be practicing formation flying with virtual wingmates. Instead, his scenario had somehow merged with an asteroid field. His training fighters were trying to maintain formation while dodging rocks that should not exist in his simulation. The Kelvin pilot looked terrified. This is contamination from your session, Vexthal told Jake. Your flight data infected the shared database. Now other simulations are spawning elements from your scenario. Another technician spoke up. Pod 3 is showing anomalies too. The diplomatic landing scenario just generated a gravity well that pulled the ship into an unplanned slingshot trajectory. That's my maneuver, Jake said, realization dawning. The simulator learned my slingshot, and now it thinks that's a normal thing to do. Precisely, Kelthera said. And it gets worse. Show him the Zentarii incident. A new video appeared. This one was from earlier in the week. A Zentarii pilot named Velkoth was flying through a routine patrol scenario. Suddenly, without any apparent reason, he flipped his ship upside down and began flying inverted. Why did he do that? Jake asked. He didn't know, Vexthal said. When we asked him, he said it felt like the right tactical choice. He said he had studied successful pilot techniques in the database and seen that inverted flight was common among high-performing pilots. But I never flew inverted, Jake protested. No, but Lieutenant Danny Thompson did, 12 years ago. He was the first human to attempt the simulator. Vexthal pulled up another file, this one marked with high-level security clearance. Thompson's attempt created the same cascade effect we're seeing now. His flight data corrupted the AI so badly that we had to shut down the entire simulator network for 3 weeks. During that time, we purged the database and retrained the AI from scratch. The file showed Thompson's flight path. It was even more chaotic than Jake's. At one point, Thompson had apparently decided that flying straight through an asteroid was faster than going around it, so he had used his weapons to drill a tunnel through the solid rock. It worked? Jake asked, amazed. It worked, Kelthera confirmed. Just like your techniques worked. That's the problem. The simulator cannot distinguish between acceptable risk and insanity when the insane approach succeeds. An alarm blared again. This time it was Pod 9. The screen showed a cadet in a medical emergency scenario, supposedly practicing rescue techniques on a damaged station. Instead, the damaged station had somehow become surrounded by asteroids, and the cadet was now trying to perform medical triage while dodging rocks. "We need to shut down all pods," a technician recommended. "Do it," Kelthera ordered. "Full emergency shutdown. I want every simulation terminated immediately." Across the control center, technicians began the shutdown sequence. One by one, the training pods went dark. Cadets emerged confused, asking what had happened to their scenarios. Jake felt guilt settling in his stomach. "I broke everything." "You completed your mission," Vexthal said. "That was your objective, and you succeeded. The fact that the simulator cannot handle your methods is not your fault. But now no one can train." "The pods will be offline for approximately 6 days," Kelthera said. "We need to purge your flight data from the system and retrain the AI. This is why humans are only permitted one attempt. Every time a human enters the simulator, we have to perform this maintenance afterward." "What about the other humans?" Jake asked. "You said Thompson was first. Were there others?" Vexthal nodded. "In the past 12 years, we have had 23 humans attempt the simulator. All 23 passed their scenarios. All 23 caused system corruption that required extensive repairs. The patterns are always the same. Humans start conventionally, then begin improvising in ways that seem impossible. The AI tries to learn from this improvisation and fails. The failure spreads to other simulations." A new screen showed a list of human names. Jake recognized a few. Kevin Hayes, who now commanded a patrol ship on the frontier. Amy Parker, who served as a navigation specialist on a cruiser. Danny Thompson himself, now a decorated lieutenant with 3 commendations for creative problem-solving in combat situations. "You all broke the simulator," Jake said, reading the notes next to each name. "Every single one," Kelthera agreed. "After Thompson, we considered banning humans from pilot training entirely. But then we realized something important. In real combat situations, human pilots have the highest survival rates in the fleet. They face impossible situations and find solutions that no other species would attempt. Their creativity under pressure is unmatched. So you let us fly. But you limit our simulator access to minimize the damage," Jake concluded. "Correct. 1 attempt only. If you pass, you're qualified. If you fail, you don't get another chance to corrupt our training systems." Jake watched the technicians working to repair the damage his flight had caused. Screens full of error codes, databases being purged and rebuilt. Other cadets standing around frustrated that their training had been interrupted. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "Don't be," Vexthal replied. "Do you know what we call the protocols you humans use? The improvisation, the crazy maneuvers, the apparent disregard for your own safety?" Jake shook his head. "We don't call them anything because they're not protocols. They're not teachable. They're not replicable. That's why the simulator breaks. It's designed to teach standardized techniques that work reliably across all situations, but human pilots don't think in terms of standard techniques. You think in terms of this specific moment, this specific problem, and what might possibly work right now." "Is that a good thing or a bad thing?" Jake asked. Kelthera smiled, an expression that looked strange on her alien features. "It's a human thing, and in space, where every situation is unique and unpredictable, that might be the most valuable skill of all." A technician called out that the database purge was complete, and they could begin the retraining process. It would take several days before the simulator would be safe to use again. Jake left the control center and walked back to his quarters. In the hallway, he passed several alien cadets who stared at him with a mixture of awe and annoyance. Word had spread quickly about what happened. Carl and Lisa were waiting outside his door. 3 days after Jake's simulator attempt, he received a summons to Conference Room 7. The message said to come alone and provided no other details. Jake walked through the station's main corridor, wondering if he was in trouble despite passing his test. The conference room was smaller than he expected. A simple table dominated the center, surrounded by chairs designed for various species. Admiral Kelthera sat at the head of the table. Commander Vexithal was there too, along with several people Jake did not recognize. One was a Zentari female with elaborate markings on her forehead indicating high academic rank. Another was a human, an older man with gray hair and a worn flight jacket. "Lieutenant Morrison, please sit," Kelthera said, gesturing to an empty chair. Jake sat, his hands folded on the table in front of him. He tried to read the room but could not determine if this was a disciplinary meeting or something else entirely. "You're not in trouble," the gray-haired human said, as if reading Jake's mind. "I'm Captain Frank Hughes. I went through the simulator 15 years ago, back before they established the one-attempt rule. I crashed it so badly they had to replace half the hardware." 15 years, Jake said. "But I thought Thompson was the first human, and that was 12 years ago." "Thompson was the first after I convinced them to let humans try again," Frank explained. "I was actually the first, but my attempt went so badly that they banned humans from the simulator entirely. Took me 3 years of arguing with Federation Command to get them to allow another chance." The Zentari woman leaned forward. "I am Dr. Saris, head of Cognitive Systems Research. I have spent the last decade studying human pilot behavior, trying to understand why your species breaks our simulations so consistently." "And have you figured it out?" Jake asked. "Yes and no," Saris replied. "I understand what you do. I still cannot fully explain why it works." Kelthera activated a holographic display above the table. It showed 2 flight paths through an asteroid field. One was smooth and curved with gentle arcs avoiding obstacles with plenty of clearance. The other was jagged and chaotic, with sharp turns, close passes, and what looked like deliberately dangerous choices. "The first path is how a Zentari pilot navigates," Saris explained. "They calculate the optimal route before entering the field. They consider every variable, plan for contingencies, and execute the plan with minimal deviation. This is how most species operate. They think, then they act." "And the second path?" Jake asked, though he suspected he already knew. "That's yours. From your simulator attempt." Saris highlighted several points along the chaotic route. "You started with a plan, but abandoned it within 90 seconds. After that, you made decisions in real time, reacting to each new situation without an overall strategy." "I had a strategy," Jake protested. "Get to the transport and bring it back safely." "That's an objective, not a strategy," Saris corrected. "A strategy is a detailed method for achieving the objective. You had no method. You simply did whatever seemed necessary in each moment." Vexthal spoke up. "Show him the decision tree analysis." The hologram changed, displaying a branching diagram that looked like a tree with thousands of limbs. When a Zentari pilot faces a problem, their mind generates approximately 12 possible solutions. They evaluate each solution, select the optimal one, and execute it. The decision tree is clean and organized. The hologram shifted to show another tree, but this one was a tangled mess. Branches overlapped, crossed each other, and seemed to grow in impossible directions. "This is a human decision tree," Sari said. "When you face the same problem, your mind generates hundreds of possible solutions simultaneously. Many of them seem contradictory. Some appear suicidal. Others are clearly impossible. And yet you consider all of them at once." "I don't think I do that," Jake said. "You do it unconsciously," Frank told him. "All humans do. We call it intuition or gut feeling, but what's really happening is that your brain is running parallel simulations of dozens of approaches and blending the most promising elements together." The simulator AI is designed to predict pilot behavior, Saris continued. With most species, prediction is straightforward. They follow logical patterns. Their decisions are deterministic given enough information. But humans are not deterministic. You introduce randomness into situations that should be predictable. Kelthara brought up another display. This one showed recordings from multiple human simulator attempts. Thompson drilling through an asteroid. Amy Parker using her ship's artificial gravity to slingshot debris at pursuing enemies. Kevin Hayes flying his ship backwards while firing forward, claiming it gave him a better angle. Every human pilot we have tested shows this same pattern, the Admiral said. You begin with standard procedures because you were trained that way. But the moment something unexpected happens, you abandon the procedures and improvise. Is that wrong? Jake asked. It's not wrong, Vexthal said. It's just different, and our simulation systems cannot handle different. They need patterns. They need predictability. Human pilot behavior has neither. Dr. Saris pulled up a new chart covered in mathematical equations. I have attempted to create a model that predicts human decision-making under pressure. The model requires 17,000 variables and still fails to achieve better than 30% accuracy. By comparison, Zentari decision models need 200 variables and achieve 98% accuracy. So we're unpredictable, Jake said. That still doesn't explain why the simulator breaks. The simulator AI learns from every pilot, Saris explained. When it observes a successful technique, it adds that technique to its training database. Future simulations use these techniques to challenge pilots and teach them proper responses. But when the AI observes human techniques, it cannot categorize them properly. Your slingshot maneuver, for example, was that a good decision or a lucky accident? It was calculated, Jake said. I knew the asteroid's mass and rotation. I plotted the trajectory in my head. But you also admitted in your post-flight interview that you had never practiced that maneuver before, Vexthal pointed out. You invented it on the spot. Yes, but it worked. That's the problem, Frank said. It worked. So the AI tries to add it to the training database. But the AI cannot determine when a slingshot maneuver is appropriate because you yourself did not follow any decision matrix to choose it. You just felt it was the right move in that moment. The hologram showed the simulator attempting to process Jake's flight data. The visualization looked like a program trying to solve an equation with missing variables. Numbers cascaded down the screen, calculations branched into infinity, and eventually the whole thing collapsed into error messages. The AI essentially suffers a logical breakdown, Sari said. It tries to find the rules behind your success and discovers there are no rules, or rather, the rules change with each situation. This creates a feedback loop. The more the AI tries to understand human tactics, the more confused it becomes. That confusion spreads to other simulations. Which is why we shut everything down after each human attempt, Kelthara added. We purge the corrupted data before it can contaminate the entire system permanently. Jake stared at the error-filled display. So, what you're saying is that humans are too chaotic to teach. Not too chaotic to teach, Frank corrected. Too chaotic to teach using standardized methods. Human pilots learn by doing, by trying, by failing, and adapting. You cannot simulate that process, because the process itself is based on encountering genuine uncertainty. But other species can learn from simulations, Jake said. Other species learn techniques, Vexthal explained. They master specific maneuvers, practice specific responses to specific situations. They become very good at handling known problems. Humans are terrible at known problems. You get bored with them, but you excel at unknown problems precisely because you do not rely on memorized responses. Dr. Saris brought up one final chart. It showed survival rates for different species in real combat situations. The Zentarii had a 72% survival rate. The Saurians had 68%. Most species fell somewhere in that range. Humans had an 89% survival rate. In actual combat, human pilots outperform every other species, Stories said. Not because you are better trained, but because you adapt faster. When situations go wrong, when plans fall apart, when the unexpected happens, you thrive. Other species freeze or fall back on training that no longer applies. You simply try something new. So the one-attempt rule isn't a punishment, Jake said slowly, understanding at last. It's a necessity. Correct? Kelthera confirmed. We cannot afford to have our training systems offline for weeks every time a human wants to practice. So we allow one attempt. If you pass, you're qualified because you have demonstrated the core skill we need, the ability to succeed despite chaos. And if we fail? Jake asked. Frank's expression grew serious. Then you lack the adaptability needed for real space combat, and no amount of additional training will change that. Humans who fail the simulator tend to be ones who over-rely on procedures, who cannot think creatively under pressure. Better to discover that in a safe simulation than in actual combat. Jake thought about his own attempt. The moment the debris had blocked his path, he had not felt afraid or confused. He had felt excited, energized by the challenge. The solutions had come to him naturally, without conscious thought. He had trusted his instincts. So, what happens now? He asked. Now you fly real missions, Kelthera said. Your official certification has been processed. You'll receive your first assignment within the week. And the simulator? We'll be back online in 2 more days, Stories said. Fully purged of your flight data. Other cadets can resume their training. Until the next human shows up, Jake said. 3 months had passed since Jake's simulator attempt. He now served aboard the Federation patrol ship Meridian Dawn, a mid-sized vessel with a crew of 47 from 11 different species. The ship handled routine patrol duties along the frontier, checking shipping lanes, responding to distress calls, and maintaining the Federation's presence in a relatively quiet sector. Jake had expected the transition from academy training to real service to be difficult, but it had been surprisingly smooth. His commanding officer was none other than Commander Vexthal, who had requested Jake specifically for his crew. The Saurian captain ran a professional ship with clear expectations and fair treatment for all crew members. Most days were quiet. Jake stood his watches at the helm, performed routine maintenance on the navigation systems, and participated in the occasional training drill. His crewmates had been skeptical of him at first. Word about his simulator incident had spread through the fleet. Some viewed him as reckless. Others thought he was lucky rather than skilled. But Jake kept his head down and did his job competently, and gradually the skepticism faded. He was just another pilot now, one member of a larger crew, until the distress call came. Jake was off duty, sitting in the mess hall with several crewmates when the alert klaxon sounded. Everyone rushed to their stations. Jake reached the bridge in less than a minute, sliding into the helm seat and strapping himself in. "Report," Vexthal ordered from the command chair. "Distress signal from the colony ship New Horizon," the communications officer reported. She was a Zelthan named Kara. "They departed Station Outpost 7 2 days ago carrying 3,000 colonists. They're stuck in the Veil Nebula with engine failure." "The Veil Nebula," Jake said, his hands already moving across the navigation console. "That's an ion storm region. Gravitational anomalies, radiation bursts, unpredictable conditions." "Correct," Vexthal said. "How long to reach them?" "At maximum speed, 47 minutes, Jake replied. "But we'll have to navigate carefully through the nebula. It could add significant time." "Other ships responding?" Kara checked her console. "Negative. We're the closest vessel by 3 hours. The New Horizon is reporting life support degradation. They estimate 6 hours before critical failure." Vexthal studied the tactical display, his scaled brow furrowed. The nebula was a swirling mass of charged particles and unstable space. Ships avoided it when possible. The few approved routes through it were narrow and required constant course corrections. A colony ship like the New Horizon should never have been inside the nebula in the first place. "Why were they in there?" Vexthal asked. "They were attempting to save time," Kara said. "Colony ships are slow. Someone decided to cut through the nebula instead of going around. Bad decision." "Very bad," the tactical officer agreed. He was a Horthax named Drex. "Rescue protocols for the Veil Nebula require heavy shielding and specialized equipment. We have neither." Jake pulled up the sensor data on the nebula. It was worse than he thought. The ion storms were particularly active today. Gravitational eddies appeared and disappeared randomly. There was no safe path to the New Horizon's position. "Standard approach won't work," Jake said. "We'd have to move too slowly to avoid all the hazards. By the time we reach them, their life support would have failed." "Then we need a non-standard approach," Vexthal said. He turned to look at Jake, his yellow eyes steady. "Lieutenant Morrison, I am giving you full helm authority. Get us to that colony ship as quickly as possible while keeping this ship intact." Several crew members turned to stare. Full helm authority meant Jake could override normal protocols and make command-level decisions about the ship's movement. It was unusual to grant that much power to a junior officer. "Sir," Jake said, uncertain. "You broke the simulator because you think differently than other pilots," Vexthal said. "Right now, I need someone who thinks differently. The standard playbook has no solution for this situation. So I need you to write a new one. Can you do that?" Jake felt his pulse quicken. This was not a simulation. These were real lives at stake, a real ship under his control, real consequences if he made a mistake. But he also felt that familiar excitement, that same energy he had experienced in the simulator when faced with the impossible. "Yes, sir," Jake said. "I can do that." "Then proceed." Jake's hands flew across the controls. First, he plotted a direct course to the New Horizon. The computer immediately flagged 17 major hazards along the route and recommended an alternate path that would take 4 hours. Jake ignored the recommendation. He brought up detailed sensor readings of the ion storms. They moved in patterns, semi-predictable if you watched them long enough. He saw gaps, brief moments when a corridor would open through the chaos. "I need continuous sensor data fed directly to my console," Jake told the sensor operator, a Zentarii named Pax. "Real-time updates, no delays." "Acknowledged," Pax replied, routing the data stream to Jake's station. The Meridian Dawn entered the nebula. Immediately, the ship began to shake as charged particles struck the shields. Warning alarms activated as radiation levels climbed. Normally, the captain would order reduced speed and careful navigation. Vexthal said nothing. He trusted Jake to know what he was doing. Jake watched the sensor data, seeing patterns in the chaos that others might miss. An ion storm would collapse in 10 seconds, opening a gap. A gravitational eddy would shift in 20 seconds, creating a brief corridor. He had to time it perfectly. "Shields to front only," Jake ordered. "Divert all other shield power to engines." "That will leave our sides and rear vulnerable," Drex warned. "We're only going forward," Jake replied. "We don't need side protection." The engineering officer complied, though Jake could hear the concern in his voice. The ship accelerated, moving faster than was safe in these conditions. The first ion storm loomed ahead, a wall of crackling energy that could fry the ship's systems. Jake counted down in his head. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The storm collapsed, leaving a narrow path. Jake pushed the ship through it with meters to spare. "Gravitational anomaly ahead," Pax announced. "Recommend course change." "Negative," Jake said. He had seen this anomaly on the sensors. It was pulling to the left, which meant if he entered it at the right angle and speed, it would slingshot them forward. The same technique he had used in the simulator, but this time with real physics and real stakes. "Lieutenant, that anomaly could tear us apart," Drex said. "Only if we fight it," Jake replied. "We're going to use it." Vexthal spoke calmly. Lieutenant Morrison has helm authority. Trust his judgment. The ship entered the gravitational eddy. The deck tilted sharply as invisible forces grabbed them. Several crew members grabbed their consoles for stability. Alarms screamed warnings about structural stress. Jake adjusted the angle slightly, letting the ship roll with the forces rather than resisting them. Then he fired the engines at precisely the right moment. The Meridian Dawn shot forward, propelled by the anomaly's own energy. They covered in 30 seconds what should have taken 5 minutes. "We just saved 18 minutes, Kara said, checking the calculations. "But we're taking damage from the radiation." "Life support is at 80% capacity," the engineering officer reported. "We can handle it for now." Jake navigated through 2 more ion storms, threading the needle between radiation bursts. He used weapon fire to ionize particles ahead of the ship, creating brief, clear zones. When a cluster of debris appeared in their path, he did not go around. He shot straight through it, using the shields to push smaller pieces aside and weapons to blast apart anything too large to deflect. The crew worked together, adapting to Jake's unconventional approach. Pax learned to anticipate what sensor data Jake would need before he asked for it. Drex coordinated weapon fire to support the flight path. The engineering team rerouted power constantly, supporting Jake's rapid changes in strategy. 23 minutes after entering the nebula, the Meridian Dawn reached the New Horizon. The colony ship was exactly where the distress signal indicated. Engines dark, hull showing signs of stress from the nebula's conditions. "Establish towing connection," Vexthal ordered. "Sir, if we tow them back the way we came, it will take too long," Jake said, studying the sensor data. "The nebula is shifting. The path we used is already closing." "Then what do you suggest?" Jake found it. A massive ion storm was forming directly ahead of them. It would be deadly in about 6 minutes when it reached full strength. But right now, in its early formation stage, it was creating a powerful outward energy wave. "We surf," Jake said. "Explain," Vexthal ordered. "The ion storm is pushing energy outward in all directions. If we position ourselves at the leading edge of that wave and ride it out of the nebula, it will push us faster than our engines could manage alone." "That's insane," Drex said. "If the storm strengthens too quickly, we'll be caught in it." "Then we better not let it catch us," Jake replied. Vexthal did not hesitate. "Do it." Jake connected the towing cables to the New Horizon. The colony ship was massive and sluggish, but that did not matter for what he planned. He positioned both ships at the edge of the forming ion storm, then cut the engines to minimal power. The storm began to push them, slowly at first, then faster. Jake used tiny bursts from the maneuvering thrusters to keep them positioned at the optimal point, riding the wave like a surfer on Earth's oceans. "Storm is intensifying," Pax warned. "If it accelerates faster than predicted, we won't be able to outrun it." "It won't," Jake said, though he was not entirely certain. He was operating on instinct, reading the patterns in the data, trusting his ability to adapt if things went wrong. The Meridian Dawn and the New Horizon accelerated together, pushed by the ion storm's energy. They covered distance rapidly, shooting toward the edge of the nebula. Behind them, the storm grew larger and more violent. Ahead, open space beckoned. "We're going to make it," Kara said, disbelief in her voice. The 2 ships burst out of the nebula with seconds to spare. The ion storm expanded behind them. A spectacular display of energy and chaos, but they were clear of it now. Both ships were damaged but intact. All crew members and colonists were safe. Vexthal stood from his command chair and walked to the helm station. He placed one scaled hand on Jake's shoulder. "Well done, Lieutenant." Jake let out a breath he had not realized he was holding. His hands were shaking slightly from the adrenaline. "Thank you, sir." Later, in the mess hall, the crew gathered to decompress after the mission. Jake sat with several of his crewmates, including Pax, the Zentari sensor operator. "I have a question," Pax said. How did you know the ion storm would push us at the right speed? How did you calculate the timing? I didn't calculate it, Jake admitted. I just felt it was right. Pax's expression showed confusion, a common Zentarii reaction when logic failed to explain something. But that's not a method. That's not a technique I can learn and replicate. No, Jake agreed. It's not. Then how do humans train for such situations? Jake thought about the simulator, about his one attempt and the chaos he had caused. He thought about the conversation with Dr. Saris and Admiral Kelthera, about decision trees with thousands of branches and adaptability that could not be taught. We don't train for situations like that, he finally said. We just deal with them when they happen. Every problem is different, so every solution has to be different too. You can't practice that. You can only do it. Pax looked frustrated. But surely there must be some underlying principles, some framework you follow. The framework is simple, Jake said. Try things. If they work, keep doing them. If they don't, try something else. Stay flexible. Don't get stuck on one approach. That's not a framework, Pax protested. That's barely even a strategy. I know, Jake said, smiling. That's why we break the simulator. Until the next human shows up, Kelthera agreed, which is why we schedule human attempts carefully, with plenty of time between them for maintenance. The meeting concluded, and Jake left the conference room with Frank. They walked together through the corridor. Does it ever bother you? Jake asked. Knowing that we break the systems just by being ourselves? Frank smiled. It used to. Then I realized something. The simulator is designed to train pilots for predictable situations. But space is not predictable. Every real mission brings something unexpected. So maybe it's not that we break the simulator. Maybe the simulator was never designed to handle real space combat in the first place. It just took humans to prove it. So? Carl asked. Did you pass? Jake pulled out his comm device and checked his service record. There, next to his name, a new certification had appeared. Federation pilot, status active. I passed, Jake confirmed. And you broke the simulator, Lisa added. It was not a question. Yeah, apparently that's just what we do. The simulator was not ending. The display flickered. Jake's ship began to glitch, appearing in two places at once. The asteroid field, which should have been far behind him, suddenly reappeared around the station. Numbers on the control panel started changing randomly. What's happening? Kelthera demanded. The simulator is crashing, Vexthal said, his voice tight with concern. It's trying to process his flight data, and it can't reconcile the solutions he used. They don't match any known protocols. On the screen, impossible things began to happen. The transport was somehow inside Jake's cargo bay, even though it was far too large to fit. The station was spinning, or maybe Jake's ship was spinning. It was hard to tell. The pirate ships reappeared, then vanished, then turned into copies of Jake's own vessel. Emergency shutdown, Kelthera ordered. Now! Technicians rushed to their consoles. The main display went dark. The simulator pod opened, and Jake climbed out, looking confused but unharmed. He had saved the transport. By any reasonable measure, he had passed the test. But the simulator itself was another story. Jake nodded. Yes, sir. Vexthal studied him for a long moment. Then he gestured toward the simulator pod. The observation room will be monitored. Do your best. That is all anyone can ask. Jake climbed into the pod. The hatch sealed behind him with a soft hiss. Darkness surrounded him for a moment. Then lights flickered on. A seat materialized beneath him. Control panels appeared, glowing with familiar buttons and displays. The simulator was building his environment. Through the cockpit window, space appeared. Stars. The massive bulk of Station Harmony behind him. And ahead, the asteroid field, slowly rotating chunks of rock that stretched for thousands of kilometers. A voice crackled over the comm system. Lieutenant Morrison, you are cleared to begin the rescue scenario. Good luck. Jake's hands moved to the controls. His breathing slowed. His focus narrowed. The simulation began. He had one chance to get this right.